thinking about... Never mind. This is a live stream by me, Don Benitez. It is October 28th, 2025. I originally was thinking about moving to another channel, but now I'm thinking I might stay here. I wanted to move to another channel for like perfectionism, but I think I can get used to being on this channel. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Strawberry says, hi everyone in chat, streamer included. I just want to say, remember to eat and drink enough, sleep well, take care of yourself, and most importantly, you're loved. Thank you, Strawberries. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. Strawberry says anytime, heart emoji. Thanks again. Grady says this is a fake stream, you lie. It's a real stream. Christy Man says what's up. Hello, Christy Man. Grady says I have and Toy Don respond. What? Jonel Reyes says dot. Okay. Grady says it's a bullshit stream. This is a real stream. I'm a human being, not an AI. Christy Man says, what are you doing here, man? Existing. Jurade Plays says hi, heart emoji. Hello, Jurade Plays. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. Grady says you're fake and I'm done. Here. Believe what you want to believe. I can't stop you. Janelle says like your stream. You like the stream. Thank you. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. Christy Man says, what's your name, what you do? My name is Don Benitez, and currently I'm live streaming. I'm not gonna say my job. Lexi says, can I get a shout out, please? I subscribed. No. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Fire in the Hole says, where are you from? I live in North America. I'm from North America. Red Fisher says, okay. Gamer Girl says, OOP. Object-oriented programming. Christy Man says, you remind me a bit of Al Pacino. Al Pacino from The Godfather. Okay. Lexi says, Lou in subscribed. What? Mr. Lynches says, what mental illness do you have? I'm pretty sure I don't have a mental illness. The Jungle Mystery says, hey, what's up? Hello, The Jungle Mystery. Red Fisher says, nice outfit there. You like my outfit? Thank you. Ta Wancha says, you need to stay on your medication in the proper dose. I think I'm mentally sane right now, thank you. Skender says, why are you so scary? maybe the gray outfit, my fast-talking, emotionless demeanor. Jacob says, keep going, heart emoji. Okay. Fire in the hole says L. Okay. James says, doggy me. No. Tiptoe says, what's the derivative of X sine X? I don't know. Gamer Girl says, you look like Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Maybe. Trance says, are you a hybrid alien? No. Mr. Lynches says, what you mean you don't have? What? King Bobby says, you look like Pitch Black from Rise of the Guardians. I don't know who that is. Big Mac says, you look like Mike Hawk. You wanted me to say Mike Hawk. There you go. Lane says, I'm inspired. Muscles emoji. Okay. Ming Yu says, why are you doing this live? To socialize or something? I'm not really sure myself. I just know that I have an urge to do it. Big Mac says, thank you. You're welcome for whatever I did. Skender says, you have a big forehead. Okay. Orange Clown says, hello. My name is Hand Sanitizer. I doubt that's on your birth certificate. James says, where are you from? North America. Trance Power says, can you smile, please? No. Starry says, your voice is deep. Okay. Big C says, I'm not circumcised. Okay. Wolf Sega says, I like the air raid sirens outside. There's sirens happening outside where you live? Okay. Sick Ass Foo says, I wish you the best, bro. You are doing most than the haters. Thanks. The Great One says, Timu Christopher Walken. Okay. Jenna Hall says, you're a good-looking human. Thank you. Tang Lem says, hi. Hello, Tang Lem. Sir Humano says, are you okay, sir? I am. Thank you for asking. Your Average Racer says, hi. Hello, Racer. James says, is your name Don? Yes, that is my first name. Spicy Man says, what the fuck is happening? I'm reading whatever chats you guys have. M&M says, hope you're well. You could have been in Twilight. Okay. Now Tech says, look like somebody scared you too many times as a kid. Okay. Big Daddy says, good morning. Hello. Edit says, hello, my name is Racial Slur. Okay. Nature Boy says, why so many short answers? Because if I give short answers, I'm able to read more messages. Now Text says, why is your eyes so pop open? Genetics, and because I'm like focused. Edit says, damn it. Okay. Spicy Man says, I'm more confused than a homeless man on house arrest. You shouldn't be. Jeb says 6767. Okay. Dazman says, the last dandelion. What? K3 says, you look like a businessman because of the polo shirt. Okay. Now Tech says, you need to relax, sit back a little bit, nerd. Yeah, maybe I do. Whatever says, show us your trailer. I don't live in a trailer. Maddie says, look like a serial killer. I look like a serial killer. Well, I don't plan on murdering anyone, so that's good. Ellie says, hello, fartbot. Okay. Toy Perzaz says, this guy gives off serial killer vibes. Okay. Alexis says, I feel as if I'm in hell listening to the devil name off all my sins. I haven't been told that in live chat before. PD says, cut your hair, please. No. Sec says, what is the second law of thermodynamics? Is that the entropy one? I don't remember. Bacon says, do you have a girlfriend, Daddy? I don't have a girlfriend. Jay says, are you depressed? No. 65 says, I will fart right now. Gross, okay. Ellie says, hello, do you like me? No, I don't know you. Ella says, you look like you've been doing this for a long time. You should take a break. Maybe, but I'm not. Big Mac says, you look exactly like P. Diddy. No, I don't. Beast Hunter says, are you a vampire? I'm not. Takalan says, do you remember me? Sorry, but I don't remember your name. Sorry. Mr. Mayo says, you need to relax. You look really uncomfortable in front of the camera. I'm just cold, to be honest. I'm just cold. Camp Crystal says, I love your responses. Thank you. Mason says, shut your granny ass up. No. Harsh says, do you remember me? Come on. I don't, sorry. If you want me to remember you, try to have like a memorable profile picture, not like the default one. Guns and Gaming says, looking like a werewolf from that one show. I don't know what show you're talking about. Ran says, no. You have a cum demeanor. Okay. Jeb says, laughing emoji. Okay. Big Mac says, who's your favorite NFL team? I'm not into football. Caden says, are you okay? Yes, I am. Thanks. Island Rich says, is my music trash? I don't know. I haven't listened to it. Yaya says, go find your Somali dad with that big forehead. Okay. Tiptoe says, you in college? Maybe. Jay says, are you gay? I'm straight. Canyon says, I eat lead. That's bad for you, don't do that. Lior says, are you desperate or not? Desperate for what? One Truth Media says, make America great again. USA flag emoji. Okay. Harsh says, no, your forehead is not big. Okay. Guns and Gaming says, everyone sub. Only if you want to. Emma says, you look like you could be in Stray Kids. I don't know why people say that. That's a K-pop group, right? Why are people saying that? George says, do you know Jesus loves you? I don't believe in Jesus, but thank you for your comment. Marine Joe says, 30-year-old virgin. You suspect I'm a 30-year-old virgin? Okay. Sec says, what type of gasoline smells best to you? I'm not into that. Lior says, are you sad? No, I'm just really cold. Jeb says, Sigma Phantom tax to Ohio. Okay. True History says, why don't you believe in Jesus? Why should I believe in Jesus? Thanos says, it's speed. What? Ella says, how long have you been doing this? These streams where I just read messages. September 2nd of this year. Liana says, your forehead is a good size and you look good. Okay. Marine Joe says, you got that weird gay pedophile smile? Jeez. Well, I'm not a pedophile. Crick says, please break character. I'm not exactly playing a character. I mean, maybe a little bit. Static Monk says, do you have OCD? No. Joel says, hi. Hello, Joel. Trippin' Flare says, Swit Chi Yo Ah Twi. What? Bacon Block says, what's your net worth? Not gonna say. Thunderwolf says, what's up, bro? Hello, Thunderwolf. Thanos says, yo. Hello. You says, can you say happy birthday, Gurk? It's my cousin's birthday. Well, I guess I just did there. Bob the Violin says, this fool looks like Poncherello on chips. What? Ren says, I'm broke. Okay. Adam Johnson says, trans. Am I transgender? No. Dark Blue says, I subscribed. Okay. Tiptoe says, what the fuck is this? This is so entertaining. Okay. Biala says, are you the actor who plays L from Death Note? No. Liana says, you sound like you'd be good at singing metal. Okay. Jeb says, do you like a Big Mac? Because, well, I do like Big Macs. Mayat says, my name is fuck. Okay. David says, are you extremely angered? No, I'm cold though. Yaya says, is an additive personality real? Is an addictive, you mean, personality real? I think so. Mark says, what's your favorite animal? The chimpanzee. Thanos says, are you gay? No. One Truth Media says, why choose hate chat? I don't mind hate. I could be banning like 1 million people right now, but I haven't banned anyone ever. Kaylin says, what do you do for a job? I'm gonna keep that private. Linnox says, how old are you? I'm an adult. I'll say that. Julia says, do you cut your own hair? No. Adam Johnson says, do you like Satan, the embodiment of evil? No. Kevin says, hate chat is the best. Not the best, but it's entertaining. I feel like hate is important to like the ecosystem of an entertaining chat. Hunter says, is it pink? Is my vagina pink? I don't have a vagina. Miyasa says, what is your favorite food? The Big Mac. Anna Villarama says, hi. Hello, Anna. TSC says, mayonnaise is not an instrument. That's true. Hunter says, can you smile? I can, if I want to. Martin says, are you a serial killer? No. 16 Double says, do you have a job? I'm gonna keep that private. Transpower says, your walls look like a cardboard box. Yeah, they do, especially from like that angle. Sus says, what happened to your eye? Genetics. Trippin' Flare says, Swit Chi Yo Ah Twi. What? Sec says, this guy works in IT. Tech guy? Maybe. Beast Hunter says, what's the color of your underwear? No comment. My Matt says, what is your favorite brain rot? I don't think I have a favorite brain rot. Holly says, I ate your fridge. No, you didn't. He says, the early internet came with the dream of a world in which the science, culture, and art of the world are at hand's reach. Okay. Sus says get life. Get a life. Okay. Jasper says commando. What? Adam Johnson says, did you not take your meds? I'm mentally fine. Christy says, why did you kill your neighbor? I didn't. Lior says, do you eat food? Yes, I'm a human just like you. Transpower says, PlayStation or Xbox? PlayStation, but I mean PC, really. Banks Holiday says, have you heard the transcendental argument for God? I haven't. Bakugu Supremacy says, do you own a tractor? I don't. Martin says, do you work for the Soviet Union? I don't. That place is defunct. Sam Hyde is here, says, I've never been gay until I saw you. Awesome. Thanks for the compliment. Heavy Bear says bear. Okay. Robin says, what's up? Hello, Robin. He says the lore of Skibidi Toilet centers on a war between two factions, the parasitic head and toilet Skibidi Toilets and the Humanoid Alliance. Okay. Luis says, are you a real person? I am. Arthur Morgan says, I am now a legal citizen of the People's Republic of China. Cool. Uncanny Mountain says, do you take enough meth or not enough? I guess not enough because I don't take any. Late says, do you believe in Allah? I don't. Adam Johnson says, did you used to work for Geek Squad? Maybe. Not so good says, I'm gay. Okay. KVN says, do you blink? Yeah, I've been blinking a lot. Otto says, are you a groper? I am not one of Nick Fuente's gropers. Mishu says, who are you? My name is Don Benitez, and I'm a streamer. EJ says, sativa or indica? What? Transpower says, you're a legend. Thank you. Matt says, nice forehead. Is that sarcastic? Indestructible says, hi, Mr. Don. Hello, Indestructible. The Good Dude Man says, big brain forehead. Okay. Cellcan says, gay porn star. Okay. Sec says, port 22 is open. What service is used on that port traditionally? I don't know. Are you talking about like internet router stuff? Lior says, do you play video games? I play Minecraft. I used to play other video games back in the day, but it's really only Minecraft now. Todd Carman says, Don, turn on the heat. What? Beast Hunter says something in Russian. I don't know what that means. Shpressa Rametta says, you're gay. I'm not. Billy the Jit says, thoughts on Atlas Meow. I don't know what that is. Ricardo says, you play Minecraft Bedrock? No, Java is better. Bombser says, you're so zesty, bro. I'm zesty? Okay. Shayna says, I know a vampire when I see one. I'm not a vampire. EJ says, Ukraine or Russia? Ukraine. Trippin' Flare says, blow yo shish move off twin. Okay. Kavian says, is that a low taper? I don't think so. Cat Meow says, do you think human beings are just particle dust? Yeah, I guess so. Lester's Leak says, would you rather live in Somalia or North Korea? Somalia. Kevin Smith says, hey Don Benitez 430, what's going on, bro? Just me reading chat. I feel good. A106 says, gay boy. You're calling me a gay boy? Okay. Shapressa says hi from Albania. Albanian flag emoji. Albanian flag emoji. Hello. Wolf Sega says, I ate a particle accelerator. Isn't that like a really big contraption? I think that would be impossible. Cheesy says, Tally Hall. What? Sapphire says, hello, you still on live? I was on here yesterday. Yes, but this is a different live stream. I took a break. Todd Carmen says, I'm leaving unless you tell me why you're cold. Because it's cold. Deku says, you look like Robert Pattinson. Okay. Shayna says, I don't catch gay vibes from you. Okay. William says, Legma 2 hairy balls. No. Aklak says, say the N-word. No. Anthony Person says, what's your favorite dinosaur? The Velociraptor. One Truth Media says, the Chinese Communist Party is an evil dictatorship. Okay. Linnox says, you are definitely in your mid-30s. Maybe. Symphysis says, roses are red, violets are blue. Aisha was 6 when Muhammad was 52. Okay. Anthony Person says, what's your favorite book? I mean, I don't know. Crispy Chip says hello. Hello, Crispy. Martin says, are you 30 years old? Maybe. I'm not gonna say my age. Lior says, do you like 6-7 meme? Not really. Sapphire says, what's your favorite movie? Eyes Wide Shut. K King says, could have an interesting conversation, yet people say the dumbest shit. Yeah, maybe. Abbott the Stickman says, hi from Iran. Iranian flag. Hello. Armando says, hey, are you good, man? Yes, I'm good, thank you. Cristorio says, what's 926 times 294? I don't know. Can you tell me? I'm curious. Alefender says, yo, what's your favorite game? Red Dead Redemption 1. Tiptoe says, guys, he's tolerating us. That's his job. I mean, I don't make any money. And never mind. Rico says, looking kind of constipated there, buddy. I look constipated? Okay. Melissa says, hi, please say hi to me. Hello, Melissa. Shapressa says, sorry for calling you gay. I don't mind. Aaliyah says, what is 3 divided by 1? 3. Dripbox says, what do you like in drugs? No comment. Linnox says, Eyes Wide Shut is your favorite movie? Are you a gooner or something? No, The Naked Bodies is not why I like the movie. Joyanne says, I'm poor. Sorry to hear. Kieran says, do you think Hollywood should make a new live-action Popeye movie? Why not? Dripox says, why you sad? I'm not sad. Beck says, do you like Mass Effect? I haven't played those games. Nerve says, poo poo pee pee. Okay. Stefan says, say my name please. Well, I said your first name. Aaliyah says, please end this live stream. No, not yet. Pangwin says, waza. Okay. The Great Sky says, tell us a racist joke. No. Clam says, bro, what's the lore behind doing this? I mean, I'm a young person. I grew up with the internet, so streaming interests me. Billy the Jit says, are you named after a restaurant? No. Toast Not Here says, do you like being freaky? No comment. Liam says, say tung tung sahur, tralalero tralala. There you go. Leor says, do you like children? Yeah, not romantically. Josh says, blink bro. I am blinking. Yadav says, India. Okay. Tiber says, laughing my fucking ass off. Okay. Mercy Benitez says, bro, I'm Benitez too. That's awesome, Mercy. E-Man says, yo, bro. Okay. Smoked says, you're one ugly girl. I'm ugly and I'm a girl. Okay. Ohi says, dumb. Okay. Someone says, do you like SpongeBob? Not anymore, but I guess I did like it when I was a kid. The Gubbyverse says, have you ever done a backflip? I haven't. Hello Ronacor says, is this pre-recorded? No. Mr. Frisbee says, I'm smoking on the day of my drug test. That's why. That's bad decision making. Seed Tester says, are you the Gemini killer from Dexter Resurrection? People keep on saying I look like that guy. Maybe I should. I'm kind of curious as to what he looks like. Father Nord says, just loving the way you take all these idiots commenting stupid shit. Thank you. Humid says, don't say what? Travis Smith says, I bet it smells like blue cheese and disappointment in that room. I don't smell anything. The Good Dude Man says, do you eat human food? Yeah, like McDonald's. I mean, maybe that's not human food, like it's artificial. Adam Johnson says, are you a liberal? Maybe. Stickman says, do you like FNAF? I haven't played those games. X Rock says, do you like extraordinary heroes? I don't know what that is. Eric says, do you like the color pink? Yeah, I mean, I like all colors. All colors have their places. Watermelon says, can you say ba black sheep? There you go. Ethan says, why are you gay? I'm not. Sec says, X rocks, it's ALP. What? It's me, Alien says, hello. Hello, it's me, Alien. Gogo says, Jesus loves you, my friend. I don't believe in Jesus, but thank you for your comment. Ohi says, Among Us. Okay. AJ says, do you like reading chat? Yes, reading the chat box is more entertaining than most books I've read. Maria says something in Russian. I don't know what that means. Nico says, do you like Ghostface? Is that like a Halloween villain from a movie? I don't know him. Shayna says, are you an atheist? Yeah, I guess so. Penguin says, more entertaining than the Bible? Yeah, generally. I mean, I read the Sermon on the Mount. That was entertaining. But chat is better, to be honest. MLS says, do too. What? Psycho says, how is your day going? It's going good. Normal, thank you. Royal Rat says, remember me, Brick? I don't. But I guess I kind of do if only one of the person has called me Brick, so I guess I kind of remember you then. Globe says, shout out to my dad, Mike Hunt. You wanted me to say my cunt. There you go. Hit Knight says, do you goon? No. Jacob Smith says, do the thug shake. Isn't that like twerking? No. Vortex says, hello, my name JS. Your name is JS? Okay. Strawberry says, are you trans? Am I transgender? No. Mr. Frisbee says, so you edge? I thought edging and gooning was the same thing. I guess I'm not informed. Leora says, do you like children? Didn't I already answer that? I said, yeah, but not romantically. Ardboyd says, are you a sociopath? I don't think so. Final Destination says, men suffer more in this hell realm. For real. Okay. Noah says, do you like boys? Sexually? No. Frizz says, do you remember me? I remember your name. Ardboyd says, are you religion? What? Bob says, hello. Hello, Bob. Al says, fool, Jamaican, homosexual. Okay. Deku says, you are playing psychology with the people in the chat by giving them attention by reading their chats. Okay. Sek says, when will I get off this toilet? That's up to you. Dharma says, what do you think of Indian food and Indian people? I mean, I don't really know much about their culture. Maybe I should learn about it. Canyon says, take a sip of water, you deserve it. Yeah, I should do that soon. Jem says, good morning. Good morning, Jem. RJ Pedrosa says, why is your voice so deep? I guess genetics. Kat says, are you a robot? No, I'm a human, just like you. Water Crystals says, are you a femboy? No. Hamza says, neighbor. Okay. The Issa says, shout out please. No. Moonlit says, how to make my boyfriend propose me? I don't know. Chunk says, shut your bitch ass up. No. Basty says, ignore them. No. Alicia says, hi, new here. Hello, Alicia. Morona says, please play Clash Royale. That's a pay-to-win game. I don't like pay-to-win. Michael Wilson says, this guy's gold, new sub. Thank you. Billy the Jit says, were you a theater kid? I don't know. Merrick says, hi. Hello, Merrick. I'm the noob says, what do you do? Job-wise, I'm gonna keep that private. John Adams Spark says, are you on the spectrum? Am I autistic? I don't think so. Tiptoe says, React or HTML? I mean, I really only know what HTML is, so I guess HTML. Ant Bank says, do you like Borderlands? I haven't played it, but it looks like an interesting game. Mick Beagle says, you sound like Snape from Harry Potter. Maybe a little, but not really. John says, you are definitely on the spectrum. You think so? I don't think so. Vessel says, do you like pasta? No. Royal Rat says, good, googly, moogly. Okay. Robloxian Coder says, do you play Roblox? I don't play Roblox. I play Minecraft, though. Aiden says, where are you from? North America. Buckeye says, help, step chat, I'm stuck. I haven't heard that before. Help, step chat. Aaron says 6'7", okay. Oscar says, are you tired? A little bit. Vessel says, Obama have di? Okay. Jay says, you look depressed. I'm not. Lior says, you're okay. Yes. Snowert says, yes, but exhaustion is constant, and I followed me worse by most likely... What? Elliot says, Ben, go to sleep. Not right now. Someone says, hi from Ukraine. Hello. Chieftain says, are you hungry? No. Damos says, bye. Bye, Damos. Rhyme says, do you like Rice Krispies? Yes, I haven't had them in a while, though. Aiden says, go drink water. That's good advice. I'll do that soon. Dumb Banana says, do you touch toddlers? Like in a pedophile way? No. Crestrom says, hey Don, what you looking for in a man? Friendship, nothing romantic or sexual. Kermit says, what's your hair routine? Fiber cream. Alicia says, I sub, by the way. What country have you been to? Not gonna say. Vamp says, what's 35 plus 32? 667. Russell says, can you say hi to my pet hamster, Mr. Felching Flufflebutt? No. Sparrow says, respect, love, and healing energy sent to all who hear this. Thanks for the positivity. Aiden says, your eyes look pretty. Thank you. William says, blank space emoji. Kate says, are you okay? Yes. Majora's Curse says, bruh, why are you so negative? Maybe it's easier for me to be negative when I'm talking to a chat and not like a real person. Gamer Girl says, Trump, Joe Biden, or Kamala? No comment. Dave says, Spawnism is not real. It's not. Don't join that cult. Frizz says, what's your favorite book genre? Philosophy, I guess, but I really don't know, to be honest. Maybe religion, actually. Rhyme says, do you need advice to talk to women? No. Aiden says, what's your opinion on LGBTQ? Happy for them. Just a kid named Liam says, if you are reading this, you are gay. I guess I'm gay, according to that. Royal Rat says a bombaclat. Okay. Sweaty Cheese says peace emoji. Okay. Alicia says, oh, it's okay. Anyway, you should really drink water. Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that soon. Milan says, droopy eyes face emoji. Okay. Starboy says, bruh, stop saying like a robot. Stop acting like a robot. No promises. Aaron says 6'7". Okay. Rhyme says, do you goon to men? I don't. Hartio Jowo says, how was your day? Good, normal, thank you. Anna says, do you like dogs or cats? Dogs. Morona says, my dog died 3 days ago. I can't stop crying. Sorry to hear that. Aiden says, I love how most of these questions and comments don't make sense at all. Yeah, a good portion are kind of nonsensical. Adam says, what is this 6'7" stuff? A meme. Ishneen says, Jaden's bus is here. Whoa. What? Vamp says, Harry Potter or Obama? Obama. Fran says, are you mixed? No. R3I says, are you real? Yes, I'm a human just like you. Anna Katana says, neighbor. Okay. Klein says, Suey. Okay. Res de Zombie says, you look like a young Tobin Bell. Okay. Gamer Girl says, your smile is so cute. Thanks. Budget Basher says, EBT baby means you were born to run up a card. Okay. Not very lean says, do you like rice? Yeah, I like rice. J. Paul says, you'd be a great choice for a Scanners remake. I don't know what Scanners is. Sharg says, Ronaldo or Messi? Messi. Anna Katana says, text. Okay. Trance Power says, ask me a question. No, that takes too much brain power on my end. Jayes says Thailand or Cambodia. Thailand. Sourless Fix says, does this dress make my butt look fat? I don't know. I can't see you. Jalen says, please let us know what is happening with you. Nothing crazy. Sharpie says racial slur. Okay. Vamp says Skibidi Toilet or Kim Kardashian. Skibidi Toilet. Tajo says gay son or thought daughter. No comment. Mahir says fuck you. Okay. Virtuality says, do you know Undertale? Yeah, I do. I haven't played it though. Shafak says, hi, I am a subscriber. Hi, Shafak. Kat says, do you read all texts? No, that would be impossible. There's too much. Tiptoe says, if you had the choice between 9mm or .45, 9mm. Oscar says, do you support a football team? No. Joshua S. says, you're the best. Have a good day. Thank you. Oscar says, I am subbed. Okay. Dirt the Ripper says, Eminem or Slim Shady? Eminem. Bob says, hi, hope you're doing fine. I am, thank you. Clam says, what do you think happens after we die? I think the answer to that question is unknowable. Budget Bashers says, favorite animal? The chimpanzee. Footblaze says, are you Diddy? I am not Diddy. Shouldn't that be obvious? And thank you, Alicia, for reminding me to drink water. Frozen Goals says, help me. With what? I probably won't be able to, though. Sorry. Billy the Jit says, do you like Scott Pilgrim? Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theaters. I enjoyed it. Jahir says, what college do you study? Not gonna say. Otto says, if you read this, you have to oil up next stream. No, I don't. Trigo says, what is your favorite Zelda game? I haven't played the Zelda games. Be Unique says, what the hell does gooning mean? Something with masturbation. I think it's prolonged masturbation. Aiden says, anyway, you look awesome, so don't let the hate get to ya. I'm gonna go now. Bye, Aiden. Elite Gaming says, what is your name? Don Benitez. Maui says, who would win if you fight the streamer with the glasses? What? Vamp says, tralalero tralala or ballerina cappuccino. Tralalero. Eliza says, strong eyes, laughing out loud. You've been staring at the screen so long. Yes, I think it may be taking a toll on my eyes. Lior says, I found a woman to scream on live. I don't want a woman to come here and scream. Budget Basher says, dragons or dinosaurs? Dragons. Anonymous says communism is pretty cool, don't you think so? I don't know. And Friendly B says Islam or Christianity? Neither. Jais says Roblox or PUBG? PUBG. Tyler's Booger says my dog sold MR. MR like ELO? What are you talking about? Poppy says, do you like femboys or tomboys? If I had to choose, I guess tomboys if I had to choose. Jais says, I am Buddhism. Okay. Tiptoe says, did you know the full name of Captain Crunch is Horatio Magellan Crunch? I did not. A-Man says, are you gay? No. Alicia says, have you read any books? One of the most recent things I've read is Self-Reliance, the essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Vamp says, femboys or Diddy? Femboys, Diddy's a rapist. Abby says, hey, you okay? Yes, thank you, Abby. The Goober Goblin says, I went hiking in 06 with a friend. Blizzard hit unexpectedly, got snowed into a shelter, had to eat my friend to survive the night. I hope you're lying. Hope you're joking. Crystal says Grinder or Sniffies. I don't know what Sniffies is. Eliza says, let no hate get to you. I don't think it does. Abby says, what's your favorite hobby? One of them is video editing. Pursuer says, I don't know what to say. Well, I guess that's something, what you just said, but Sizzle says, you need moderators. I haven't needed to ban anyone yet, so I don't think I do. Sayazi G says, need help, I stole an F-16, and I need you to say, ice, wallow, cum. You wanted me to say ice, swallow, cum? Well, there you go. Montana says, hey, my Pookie, I have a crush on you. Okay. Tyler's Booger says, I locked my 78-year-old grandma in my basement. Let her out. Charbel says, why are you calm? Why shouldn't I be calm? Should I be acting crazy? Cornholio says, you have psychopathic eyes. Well, I hope that is like a false sign. I don't think I'm a psychopath, and I don't hope I'm a psychopath. Budget Basher says, help, I'm tweaking. I can't help you. Anisa says, hello. Hello, Anisa. Vamp says, I'm in your wall, help. No, you're not. Lambo says, why you look mad? I'm not mad. Jeb says, do you know me? Yeah. You spam quite a bit. I don't like you that much because of that, to be honest. I like you a little bit, though. Footblaze says, are you Diddy? No. Montana says, you look like Donald Trump, but gay. I think the gay version of Donald Trump would look different than I. Shadow YT says, say shadow if you see my comment. There you go. Alicia says, oh, nice. By the way, Is it normal for my friend to just randomly start barking in my messages? I don't know, but I wouldn't mind it. Johnny says gay. Okay. Sage of Malice says, are you autistic? I don't think so. Techno says, why are you gay? Gay radar don't fails. I'm not gay. Jake says, what color is your pubic hair? Is it hard to guess? Don Benitez is gay, says, read my name. Cool. Daryl says, wasn't even mean and I got skipped. There's way too many chats for me to keep up. Techno Gamer says, you are, I knew it, you smile. What? Jose says, favorite soda? Coca-Cola. Pursuer says, what's your favorite color? Gray. La 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 says, is it normal for my friend to eat ants off the ground? No, it's not. Lambo says, so you're not mad. I'm not mad. Poppy says, another unemployed dude? Maybe. Someone says, free Palestine? Okay. MK World says, when are you gonna blink? Am I seriously not blinking? I hope I'm blinking. Weldsy says, oh hell nah, laughing emoji. Okay. Phoebe says, hi. Hello, Phoebe. Jose says, what if his friend is an anteater? I guess that's fine then. Alicia says, can you please help me with my subject revision since I have an exam next week? No. Edits Makers says hi. Hello, Edits Makers. Poppy says, laugh if you're not gay. Simon says, Dexter. Okay. Paul Souse says, did Diddy bend you over? No. Lambo says, so you're happy? Yes. Jayes says, bro, are you America or Canada? No comment. Crystal says, are you abandoning this channel? I was thinking about it, but I think I'll stay. Maya says, did you sleep last night? Your eyes are red? I mean, I'm running on proper sleep, but are my eyes red? Really? Really? Budget Basher says, I love you, come home, it's been 10 years. I have no idea who you are. Alicia says, how long have you been live? This live stream? An hour. Don Benitez is kind, says, can you say super califragilisticexpialidocious? There you go. Poppy says, this dude needs a job application. Okay. Shut your bitch ass up says, have you seen Dexter? I've seen a few episodes. Chris says, why you look like that? Genetics. Abby says, what is your ethnicity? Well, I think of myself as Hispanic, Latino. Don Benitez is kind, says, bro sweared. Yeah, I do that often because you guys swear. Budget Basher says, do you watch The Office? No. Someone says, say free Palestine. There you go. Stefan says, say my name. There you go. You don't want to know says, what's your favorite? Favorite what? It's Alex says, please stop being grumpy. No. Zatine B Nod says, we look similar. It looks like you took a screenshot of me and made it your profile picture. That's cool. Wendy says, do you read Warrior Cats? No, I don't. Charbel says, can you to me? What? 99 Nights Bro says, can you shout out me? No. Jim says, would you rather watch a tree grow? What? Alicia says, why is your hair kind of spiky like my friends? I don't know. Synth says, what's your main device? Computer? PlayStation? Ice? Wallow? Phone? Computer. Techno says, what if I am your former roommate and I know everything about you? I guess it is what it is. I don't mind. Lambo says, say jack my off. You wanted me to say jack me off? Okay. JK says, am I talking to me? Well, maybe, but you're also talking to me. Side G says, you are in live? I am alive and I am live streaming. Lambo says, sad face emoji. Sorry, you're sad. Someone says Palestine or Israel. No comment. Don Benitez is kind says, do you have a girlfriend? No. Dominic says, the reading of the evidence. What? Synex says hello. Hello, Synex. Zynex. Sorry. Shannon says heart emoji. Okay. Shimbolok says, what do you think of the Jews? Nothing but good thoughts. Budget Basher says, can I borrow $8 for cigarettes? No. Brad says, what is your favorite genre or tag? What? Abby says, what is your favorite movie? Eyes Wide Shut. William says, circle emoji. How much have you swallowed cum? I haven't swallowed cum before, and I don't plan to. Sleepy says, do you have any pets? Yes. Sachin says, what's your favorite song? I don't know. Alicia says, Malaysia or Indonesia? Indonesia. Shannon says, hey. Hello, Shannon. Lala Loopsy says, is it normal for my friend to threaten eating my dog? If he's joking, yeah. Synth says, are you emo? Well, I don't think of myself as emo. AG Edit says, are you gay? No. I ate new velvet says hello. Hello, nice to see you again. Iana says, can you say Joash and Sean is cool? No. Techno says, last time you suck a dick, how's the taste? I haven't done that, and I doubt I will in my lifetime. I don't want to. Ethan says hello. Hello, Ethan. Jim says, are you dumb? Maybe. I don't know. Luke says, can I have a hug? No, that's impossible. GTR says, hello, everyone. Hello, GTR. Irate Spartan says, are you a Stanley Kubrick fan? I would say so. Rainbot says, when is the last time you felt an emotional? I mean, it depends, like, what degree you're asking. I'm emotional right now, like, to a degree, I guess, technically. Reflect says, yo, Don, do you remember me? Yes, I remember you. Reflect, but with the number 3, I remember your name. AG says, do you play Steal a Brain Rot? I don't play that, or even Roblox. Budget Bashers says, favorite car? I'm not into cars. Rashad says, what's your favorite car? Not into cars. JK says, do you look back at it? What? Royal Rat says, my Mike Hawk is the biggest. Thank you. Marcus says, do you have a job outside of YT? Maybe. Poppy says, bro is not blinking since 1890. Am I really not blinking? Alicia says, is it normal for my friend to propose to my other friend who had the same gender as them with a log? With a log? What do you mean? Christoph Gray Sanina says hi. Hello, Christoph. Lala Oopsie says, do you like Golden by K-pop Demon Hunters? I don't watch K-pop Demon Hunters. AKA Caroline says hi. Hello, Caroline. William says, barcode, are you robot emoji AI? No, I'm a human. Pappy says, if you smile, I drop $20. I'm not monetized. Skizzy says, what is your favorite food? The Big Mac. Cool Bro says hi. Hello, Cool Bro. Tamara says, how are you? I'm good. Thank you, Tamara. Ant Bank says, what cartoons did you watch as a kid? Avatar, The Last Airbender. Regular show. Marco says, FYI, Lopez is a federal agent. There's someone named Lopez in the chat, and they're a federal agent. Okay. ZOEY6 says, sup. Hello, Zoe. Lambo says, say Mike Ox small. You wanted me to say my cock is small? Okay. 12 Kane says, you sound like a serial killer. Maybe I sound like one, but I'm definitely not one. Tamara says, is it weird that my son is raising up an adult? No comment. Eclipse says, name a car for an edit. 2007 Honda Civic. Original Yoda says, you're ugly. I'm ugly. Okay. Erminio Otone says, hi mate. Hello, Erminio.